I am 87 years old, and this spring I went out with a shovel and put 4 trees in the ground that I will never sit under. 2 walnut, 1 oak, and a cottonwood whip no thicker than my thumb. Then I set a jar of seed by the door for a garden I may not weed in August. My son watched me from the truck and said nothing, and his nothing was a question. That night I sat at the table and made myself answer it. I found 6 reasons. 6. Not one of them made me feel foolish, and not one of them made me feel noble. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years. Come closer a minute. Pull the chair over here by the window where the light is still good, and let an old man talk plain. I am not telling you I have made peace with dying. I want more mornings than I am going to get, and I want them badly. I am not telling you I am brave. I am not even telling you to go plant a tree. I am telling you what the shovel told me. There is a difference between finishing your life and feeding one, and after 75, that difference is most of what is left to choose. My grandmother had a saying she used every spring with her thumb pressing a seed down into cold dirt like she was tucking somebody in. Plant for the hands you will never shake, she said. Those are the only hands big enough to carry you. I was 7 and I thought it was nonsense. I wanted beans I could eat by July. She let me have my beans. Then she pointed down the fence line at the apple trees, the crooked ones, older than the house, and asked me who had gone out in the rain to set them there. I did not know. Nobody knew. That was her whole point. A person who plants only for the hands he can shake is farming a very small field, she told me. Every year of his life that field gets smaller until he is standing in the middle of it alone, holding one bean. So here is the first confession, and it is the one that started all the others. The shade I sit in every afternoon was planted by a man who never met me. There is a cottonwood at the west corner of this house so wide now that 2 grown men cannot get their arms around it. My grandfather set it in the ground as a green switch, in a wet spring, on land he did not own, in front of a house that was not yet built. He was gone the winter before I was born. My father was still a boy when that tree passed the barn roof. I have never once shaken that man's hand, and I have spent 87 summers in the cool he made. Every board of this porch was hot by noon this July, and every afternoon I carried my chair around to the west side and sat down in air 10 degrees kinder than the rest of the world, and I did not earn 1 minute of it. Not one. It came to me the way rain comes to a field, from somewhere upstream, decided by somebody I cannot thank. Before I go on, let me set one small thing down beside you. It is a book called The Native Way. I gathered my grandmother's plain teachings into it, the sayings about soil and patience and people that I have leaned on my whole life, written down slow, in the same voice I am using with you right now. The link is in the description under this video, and it is there if your heart wants it. There is no pressure at all from me. I am sitting right here with you either way, and every word of this list is yours, whether you ever open a page of it or not. That is the only time I will mention it. Now, let me give you the second confession, and I will tell you ahead of time that this one is not flattering to me. It is the one my daughter would recognize if she were sitting in your chair, and she would probably nod before I got the sentence finished. A man who plants only what he will live to harvest has already agreed quietly to stop growing. I did that. After my knee went bad at 76, I put in nothing but bucket tomatoes for 2 summers. 90-day things, quick things. I told my daughter it was practical, and it was practical, and it was also a lie. What I had done was let the calendar into my garden. I had started asking every seed the same question before I would plant it. Will I be here to see this? A question like that shrinks a man an inch at a time. By the end of that second summer, I was not choosing plants anymore. I was collecting evidence against my own future. I would look at the walnut in the catalog, 20 years to a real crop, and set the catalog down like it had insulted me. That catalog is still in the drawer. I know the page by heart. There is a photograph on it of a man standing under a full-grown walnut with his hat pushed back, and I used to look at that hat and think, Somebody dug a hole for you before you were born, mister, and here you are getting your picture taken in the shade of it. My grandmother had a hard little line for this. A seed is a useless thing inside a closed hand, she said. It is not food, and it is not shade, and it is not anything at all until it leaves you. That is the whole design of the thing. A man is built about the same. Whatever I hold back because I am afraid of the arithmetic, that is the part of me that quits being any use to anybody. The tomatoes fed me fine. They simply did not require anything of me past September, and a person who is never required past September begins to end in September. The third confession is the one I am least proud of, so I will set it down here in the middle where it belongs. The planting is the only argument I have left against being forgotten. There was a man I knew named Samuel. Quiet, big hands, worked at the grain elevator 40 years. In his 50s, he started setting pine seedlings along the north side of the county road on his own time, with his own money, a few dozen every spring in ground that was not his. People thought he was odd for it. He kept at it better than 20 years. 11 of us came to his funeral. 11. I counted because counting is what a man does when he cannot cry. I drove that road last October. There is a wall of pine along the north side now, 60 feet up, and behind it sits a school, and the wind that used to strip shingles off that end of town goes over the top of the whole thing like something talked it out of the idea. I stopped the truck and sat there. Not one child on that playground has ever heard the name Samuel. Not one of them ever will. But the pine outlives the one who named it. Every tree in that row is still doing the exact thing he asked it to do, every hour, in every weather, for people who will never know there was an asking. I would like to tell you I am above wanting that. I am not. I am 87, and I have watched the phone go quiet, and I know what is coming for my name. So I put things in the ground that keep working after the name is gone. It is not fame, and it is not memory exactly. It is closer to leaving the stove warm for somebody who will come in cold and never wonder who lit it. The fourth confession is about my hands, and it took me the longest to see. My hands needed work that was not about me. There was a stretch after my wife died when nearly everything my hands touched all day was my own body. Pill bottles, my own buttons which had gotten harder, the rail on the stairs, my own knee, rubbed every morning like it might apologize. The little pad by the phone where I wrote down what the doctor said. Hands are honest instruments. Whatever you point them at is what they teach you to think about, and mine were pointed straight back at me for the better part of a year. I got very good at thinking about me. My grandfather used to say that a hand which only tends itself will close into a fist by habit. He was talking about money at the time. It works for everything. The morning I put that first walnut in was not a noble morning. My knee hurt. The ground was cold and stupid with clay. But for 2 hours, my hands were completely occupied with something that had nothing whatsoever to do with my own arithmetic, the depth of a hole, the spread of the roots, the water, the wire cage against the deer. And when I finally stood up, I was not the subject of the day. The river does not wait around to see the canyon finished. It leans on the same stone every hour it has, and that leaning is the entire life of it. The canyon is somebody else's business. The fifth confession is for my grandchildren, and if you carry only one of these out of here with you, I would ask you to carry this one. They are going to need proof that somebody believed in a year they will live to see. When I was a boy, there was an old woman down the road we all called Grandmother Weaver. The hard winter came, the year the corn failed twice, and she had seed in a blue glass jar up on the high shelf, beans and squash and corn, and she was as hungry as anybody else on that road. That jar sat up there from November to March, and she would not touch it. My mother asked her about it straight out one afternoon, and she said, "If I eat the spring, then there is no spring." She got thinner, and the jar stayed full. Come April, she carried that jar out under her arm and put every bean in it into the ground, and by August there were 4 families up and down that road eating out of her rows, and not one of them had been as hungry in February as she had been. My granddaughter's 19 now, Smart girl, kind, works too much. She says things to me on the phone like, I don't know if there's going to be much left by the time I'm your age. She says it lightly, the way young people say the heaviest things, and then she laughs and asks about my knee. I cannot argue her out of that. I have tried. Arguments are wind. But an old man who plants a walnut tree has made a statement she can drive over and put her hand on, and the statement says this: somebody who has seen more winters than you have thinks there will be a summer in 2060, and he bet 2 hours of a bad knee on it. That is not a promise. I cannot promise that girl anything. It is only evidence, a jar somebody refused to eat, kept on a high shelf through a bad winter, for a spring she would not be sitting at the table to see. And the sixth confession is the quiet one underneath the other five, the most important of all, and I did not understand it until this year. The planting is the prayer. The tree was never the point. When I say prayer, I mean it plainly, the ordinary way. An intention set down somewhere, you cannot control it. Nothing said over anybody. Nothing solemn, no words that belong to other people. Just a wish put into ground. There was an old fellow up the valley we called Old Man Standing Pine, because that is what stood by his gate. The drought year, he set out 40 seedlings along his south fence, and every last one of them was brown as a matchstick by August. Every one. The next spring he went out and did it again. I was maybe 30, and I asked him why he would bother, and I remember I asked it a little unkindly. He told me the planting was the prayer. The tree was only ever the answer, and the answer was never his half of it. I did not know what the man meant for 50 years. Look at a flower sometime. Look at what it actually does. It opens, it makes seed, it lets go, and then it steps aside. It does not stay to watch. It does not follow the seed down the wind. It does not ask for a report on where the seed landed. The stepping aside is not the flower failing at anything. The stepping aside is the flower finished. 4 trees went in this spring. Some of them will not make it. The deer, the drought, a boy on a mower who is not paying attention. That is not my half. My half was the shovel, the water, the hour, and the wanting good for somebody I will not meet. My half is done the minute I stand up. Now I want to be careful with you here, because I know how a list like this can land on a person after 75. Naming those 2 summers of bucket tomatoes was not the same as hating myself for them. I want you to hear that plainly. A man can look straight at a thing he did for 2 years and call it by its right name without deciding that the name is now his name. I was not a small man in those summers. I was a man with a bad knee and a fresh grave, and a habit of asking every seed whether it would outlast me. A habit lives in the hands. It does not live in the bones. Hands can be given a different job, and that is the whole of the good news I have. If I had decided instead that I was simply the kind of man who had gone small, there would have been nothing left to do about it. You cannot change what you have made into a fact about yourself. You can only change what you have left standing as a behavior. So I kept it a behavior. I said, for 2 summers, I planted only quick things. I did not say, I am a coward about time. And then, that following March, I went out and put a walnut in the ground, which is not a heroic act. It is a hole, a stick, and a bucket of water. It took 1 hour of one ordinary morning, and my knee complained the entire time. What changed was not my character. What changed was where my hands were pointed, and the rest of a man follows his hands more than he likes to admit. So let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl when she was getting ready to say the true thing. 6. The shade I sit in was planted by a man who never met me and never got a cent from me. A man who plants only what he will harvest has already agreed to stop growing, and I agreed for 2 summers. The planting is the only argument I have left against being forgotten, and I am honest enough to admit I want the argument. My hands needed work that was not my own body. My grandchildren need something they can put a hand on that says, somebody old believed in a year they will live to see. and the planting is the prayer, not the tree. Now turn it around and hold it up against your own life, because none of this was ever really about trees. What have you got going right now that is only 90 days long? When was the last time you did something whose whole result belongs to somebody you are never going to meet? Whose shade are you sitting in this minute that you did not earn? And if you cannot answer that last one, is it because there is no such shade over your chair, or because you have never once looked up? And who will be sitting in your shade in 40 years if you would be willing to plant it and never once hear about it? I know what some of you are asking, because I asked it at that kitchen table with the shovel still muddy out on the porch. Is it too late for me? Here's what I can tell you honestly, and I will not tell you one thing more than I know. Age took my knees. It took most of the hearing on my left side, and nearly everybody I started out with. It did not take the noticing. It did not take the choosing. You can still see one habit clearly today, and you can still make one ordinary choice about it. A seed, a phone call, an hour spent on a thing that finishes without you. What comes of it was never our half. I would like to hear from you now. Of these 6, which number hit closest to home? Be honest with me, the way I was honest with you at that table. Tell me down in the comments, the number and one line about why it was that one. I read every one of them at night with my coffee going cold beside me. And if this sat easy with you, come back tomorrow and sit with me again. There is a chair here by the window. The afternoon light is still good, and I am not going anywhere for a while yet.